Messy and masterful. In this podcast, we speak about the success of people who have achieved, built, or done something amazing, special, remarkable, noteworthy, and/or fabulous. Think of presidents, doctors, chefs, architects, filmmakers, writers, philosophers, CEOs, journalists, and the list goes on of people who've had a genuine impact on this world. But rather than underlining their career victories, we speak about the challenges they needed to overcome to actually get there. In each episode, we discuss 3 of such challenges, obstacles, difficulties, and/or hurdles with our guest, putting the messy of their lives next to the masterful. A very warm welcome to you. My name is Alder Pap, and I'm so happy you could make it. So sit back, relax, and download the podcast here.
And this is something that I think still do, and I took away from ballet. You're doing something which is super hard, like your toes can be literally bleeding in your shoes, and you make it look effortless, and you smile while doing it.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy you could make it for another episode of Messy and Masterful. And we have a very interesting episode for you. I personally think it's fascinating because the person I'm speaking to, who is a dean, navigates herself basically on the crossroads of business life on one hand, entrepreneurship together with business life, and on the other hand on academia. So how to filter out academic wisdom out of all the things happening within big corporations, taking into account the turmoil that loads of businesses have to cope with, and keeping the boat afloat, staying profitable. And then at the end of the day, okay, how can we basically condense our wisdom into great new lessons that others can learn from as well? So a fascinating discussion with Dr. Marion Debruyne, who is the dean of the top-ranked Vlerick Business School in Belgium. So we speak to her about her remarkable career to date, how she is finding her way through international business life, what her ambitions are to grow the Vlerick Business School, but also what we should look for when searching for optimal happiness in our careers. And on that note, Dr. Debruyne recently wrote a book with Dr. Kathleen de Stobbelaar, which is called Making Your Way, which is all about careers and the fact that it isn't perfect, much like the spirit of messy and masterful. So if you want to know more about Dr. Debruyne or about her recent book, then please go to our show notes where you will find all the relevant links. Hope that makes sense. For now, enjoy episode 66, Dr. Marion Debruyne, the Dean. Dr. Marion Debruyne, a very warm welcome to you.
Hello, Aldo. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. So we're today, August 16th. Some people are coming back from their summer holidays. Did you have a bit of a break?
Same for me. Yes, yeah. I just got back last week and getting into work things again.
Nice. Did you go anywhere special?
Yeah, I went to France and to Portugal.
Oh, nice.
Really nice. A bit road tripping, traveling around, having some family time with the kids.
Nice. Very important as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what does, because you are, I think I've managed to get hold of people in your team to speak to you, I believe somewhere in June, and then, great, we could do this in August. So, and that's all good, right? I really appreciate it. And that's the way we should do this. But that also testifies to you having a very busy schedule. So
right.
That begs the question.
It can get packed, yeah.
It can get packed, I can imagine. So, but that also begs the question, what does downtime look for you? Like when it's the complete opposite?
Downtime for me is never like complete downtime, I actually this morning I read somewhere an interview with somebody who said, I don't understand these people who go on holiday without their laptops. Now, I don't take my laptop on holiday, but I definitely always have my iPad with me, and I always keep, checking emails. So I'm never completely out of it,
Yeah.
because it makes me more at ease knowing what's going on, and if there is anything that needs my attention, that I can just deal with it and be done. And that's the way I handle it.
You handle things. So
Yeah.
so you try not to work, but secretly you do work. You're a bit of a passive worker then.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
try to compartmentalize,
yeah.
and just check things, see if anything needs to be done or needs my attention, and then I can just, okay, enjoy my day. Um, that's what works. That's what works for me. I once did a trial where I said, I'm not going to check, email or anything for a week. That was torture. It made me more
Yeah.
nervous than just
Yeah.
dealing with it.
Yeah, no, I would have the same. It's almost like a stress mitigation that you every now and then need to check your email just to know you're safe, right? It's not
Yes, and then
about
you're
it's
at
yeah,
ease, and
yeah,
yeah, and
yeah. It's a funny one. I mean, my wife is as workaholic as I am, so we do take our laptops, even though we don't always want to, and we don't. It's not to work, but it's indeed for exactly what you say. I mean, if we would have an iPad that would have access to our work mails, then that would be the
yeah,
device.
yeah,
But we do take our laptops because every now and then we do want to check in as to where things stand.
yeah. Very
Having
peace of
said that,
mind.
we are not the dean of such an amazing business school, and we're going to talk all about your career path.
Mhm.
Um, but before we do so, could you give me a little bit an idea of what a dean does? For me, it's such an all-encompassing word. It's so like, it's the face of the school. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, it's a title which basically represents being, the leader, the CEO of the school. In the case of Fleric, which is an independent business school, so not part of a larger university, definitely is the case. And so that, means that you have the strategic and operational responsibility and responsibility. And indeed also that, you represent the school towards all of its stakeholders, alumni, students, board, the broader business school community, press. So a lot of it is indeed being sort of the external face of the organization, something that I do enjoy a lot as well.
So wow, so it's not only representing the academic curriculum. It's really running the business. You're as
Right.
you say, you're the CEO as well, because
Mhm.
I think when you're a dean at a kind of a state university, it's more the academic side. Am I correct,
Yeah,
would that be
typically also the budget responsibility. Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So could you, as far as possible, could you take us like through a standard day? So you arrive at the school, and then what happens?
This is one of the things that I really enjoy about my role, and that is that there is no standard day.
Yeah.
Like every day is different and different locations. So today I'm actually working from home.
Mm.
I could be on any one of our campuses. I could, I'm traveling to Korea in a couple of weeks. So that's going to be nice as well to actually be, teach for a company in one of our company specific programs, something that I don't do as much as anymore, but so I'm very much looking forward to do that again. And to go to South Korea. So and there's never a day which is the same as another. And that is really something that I think even as a kid, I dreamed of, having a job and a life like that.
Mm.
Of course, it can get super busy and packed, as you said. And so, sometimes you have to remind yourself, like, actually, you're doing today what you dreamt of
Yeah, 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 yeah,
as a child. So,
yeah,
be mindful of how
yeah,
lucky you are.
yeah, yeah. Taking a step
There is,
back and
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. There really is no standard day, and
yeah.
yeah, and that's
But
that's that that's super fun. I was looking at scheduling a meeting in 2 weeks, and I was looking, okay, I start the day with a photo shoot, and then I have an internal meeting, and then I have a lunch with somebody who could become a speaker, and then I'm meeting our chairman. And so it's very, Yeah, it's very varied.
Yeah. We are privileged to have listeners from all over the world, so over 200 countries. Could you give a short pitch as to what Vlerik is? So it's an independent business school, but
Yeah.
it looks at business almost from a holistic perspective. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So Vlerik is indeed, as you said, I think one of the leading business schools in Europe. We're based in Belgium with main campuses in Brussels and also in Ghent and Leuven in Belgium. And I think what sets the school apart is this drive, to instill each of our participants and students with what we call entrepreneurial leadership. And basically, the way we define that is that Vlerik people really at heart are people who want to drive positive change, take initiative, have always looking at the opportunities in challenges, take ownership, see possibilities, and basically be entrepreneurial leaders. And that you can be an entrepreneurial leader in many different ways. Of course, you can start a business, which many of our alumni have done. You could be a freelance gig worker. You can work in an organization and take ownership there and drive initiatives and be intrapreneurial, as we call it. But aside from obviously the knowledge that you get when you do an MBA or a master's program or a specialized program, any business school is about acquiring business knowledge and be able to turn that knowledge into practice. Aside from that, what we also want to instill is this spirit of entrepreneurial leadership that I think characterizes Vlerik as a school and also Vlerik people, basically.
Mm-hmm. No, and I can testify to that because, before we hit the recording button, I said, I am an alumnus as well. I was a student for the general management program in Ghent in 2006. And you mentioned that you rejoined the school in 2005 because I saw from your bio that you were also a student at Vlerik.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Vlerik is also my alma mater. I was a student there. We're not going to say in what year, but and for me, the experience of doing also for me a master's program at Vlerik was really transformational.
Yeah.
I joined the school having studied engineering, really being a shy engineer, and I came out of that program feeling like ready for the world, and having turned into somebody who would enjoy change, felt ready to tackle challenges, even though I knew I don't know how to tackle these challenges yet, but I'll figure it out, and I had that inner confidence that I really gained during my time at Vlerik. And so this was a very meaningful, transformational time for me that changed me as a person. And so coming back to the school in 2005, I joined the faculty then. I had been in the US, and so I moved back to Europe, joined Vlerik. That was very meaningful in the sense of indeed having been a student and so joining this school, which meant so much to me and which I carried really deep into my heart. But at the time, I had no idea and absolutely even no intent to ever leading the school. In fact, when I joined, I told the dean at the time, I said, listen, I'm going to join the faculty. I'm going to focus on my research and teaching. Don't ask me for any managerial duties or challenges because I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Obviously, that plan completely derailed. And I got more and more involved in managing the school. And I've been leading the school as its dean since 2015, so 8 years already.
Wow. And so step by step through your career path, which is also a nice segue into your challenge, which is about teaching at a very young age in a country completely new to you. So after your master's in marketing, you decided to excel in academia, getting your doctoral degree in applied
Exactly.
economics, right?
Yeah, exactly. So indeed, having been in engineering, and then I completely pivoted from engineering to marketing,
Yeah.
and through that master's program, and that really opened up a new world for me, which I found so fascinating and so interesting. I vividly even remember like the first classes that we got at Fleric, and I thought, oh wow, this is what I want to do. This is what I really am passionate about. And so I really wanted to go into, more in depth. And so that got me into doing a PhD, even though, when I started that master's program, again, this was totally not my plan. I've never been a strong long-term planner. But I just, I got into this. I got this opportunity to start a PhD, and I thought, this is really a new field for me, and I really want to, I want to dive deeper. And that's exactly what you do when you do a PhD, and you become an expert in a tiny, tiny thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and you contribute to the knowledge on that. And doing research was also something that I particularly enjoyed. And so that got me into academia.
Yeah.
And then I moved
So
to the US during my PhD.
so instead of choosing to become a practical marketeer, which I think many of the
And was
master in marketing
my
students
plan
will
as
do.
well,
Yeah.
or sort of my
Yeah.
idea, like that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, but you became inspired by the teaching function, basically the academic process of
Yes,
teaching and
and
learning. Yeah,
also just the knowledge, the research behind
yeah,
it, and being able to really go in depth.
yeah.
And yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, it also testifies to a great, I think, versatility with you because you operate on both levels, which is also your job now, right? It's not only the academic side, it's also running the business, right?
It's
Making
also the
sure the
business.
bills are
Yeah,
paid.
in the end, indeed, I
Yeah,
got into the business side, but let's say
yeah,
the business of business schools. I'm also on
yeah,
the board of a couple of companies, so I'm also there involved in in business.
yeah,
So I keep having these two sides, sort of the academic side and the practical side,
yeah,
which also characterizes Fleric.
yeah,
We really excel in, we call it turning knowledge into action.
yeah,
'Cause knowledge in and of itself is not meaningful or worthwhile if you don't do something with it.
yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I also have my own story, my own Vlerick experience, but that'll take another interview at least to get through that. But let's go into your first challenge. So you say like you're doing your doctoral degree that takes you to the US. Am I correct to assume that you were offered a fellowship and
Yes,
that took you to
exactly.
the
So
US?
I,
Okay,
I,
yeah.
I moved to Philadelphia first, joined Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania as a visiting fellow. There, focused mostly on research. And then I joined Kellogg at Northwestern University as well as a visiting fellow. And at the same time, I was on what we then, still call the academic job market, to become a full-fledged faculty member at the end of your PhD. And so then I became a professor, an assistant professor at Emory University, the Goizueta Business School in Atlanta. So I moved to Atlanta. So I had Philadelphia, Chicago, then Atlanta.
Wow.
And all that indeed before I was 30.
Yeah, yeah,
And so what I vividly remember as a big challenge was indeed so becoming a faculty member, having been so in depth, in research, and then being thrown in front of a class of MBA students
yeah,
who mostly were older than I was.
hmm,
I think the average age of an MBA class is like 35. And so you're this new professor and you're simply being told, hey, so your class is marketing strategy. This is when your teaching hours are. And there you go.
yeah, yeah,
Go do.
yeah, yeah,
And so, I was 29 in front of this, about 60 MBA students. And I felt like completely unqualified
yeah,
for the
yeah.
job. And I remember that first class, literally I had shaking knees, that expression. I didn't even know that, that existed in real life. Literally my knees were shaking.
Shaking, yeah. That's where the expression comes from, that
Yes,
someone literally
yes. Then
experienced
I
that.
knew.
Yeah,
Then I
yeah.
knew. This is where the expression comes from.
Yeah, I also had similar experience that it's like, oh, now I realize that why they say this, because you never understand until you actually experience
Right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there you are in front of this class with your knees shaking. Were you suffering a little bit from imposter syndrome, that you thought like, oh, they're
Oh,
going to find out?
absolutely. Listen, I didn't know the concept of imposter syndrome at a time. And so the only thing that I knew how to do or to deal with is, and to get through the semester was, my motto became fake it till you make it. I thought, this class of MBA students is like, a group of, Hans that if they sense that I'm scared,
Yeah.
they're gonna come after me. So
Eat
let's
you alive.
fake it. Yeah, they're gonna eat me alive. So let's just fake it till I make it. And I just, put on a brave face and just did it. And I remember a little bit later coming across a piece of research. I think it was even the year after, on imposter syndrome. And it was just coincidentally. And this was such an aha moment to realize, oh, I am not the only one who feels like I'm just faking it. And, I'm just going to be discovered as this fake professor just pretending.
Yeah.
She actually can do this job, and I'm going to be called into the dean's office and they're going to say, so Marion, we took a shot at you, but it's not working.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the end
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Even though, I had good evaluations, I got, I even got a salary increase in that first year, but still, I still felt like I'm going to be discovered as just not, not up to it.
I was about to say, you weren't faking anything until you made it. You were already there, but you almost didn't trust yourself with the skill set,
Absolutely.
which happens to so many people,
Which
right?
happens to so
Yeah,
many people.
yeah,
Like of course I wasn't unqualified.
yeah,
I was qualified as hell.
yeah, 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 yeah,
I had all the credentials. And someday needs to be your first day as a
yeah,
professor. It's
yeah,
like in any profession, if you're a doctor or whatever, one patient needs to be your first patient, and
yeah,
one student needs to be your first student. And I felt sorry for that first group for being my first students.
yeah,
But still, and definitely I had the credentials. I wasn't faking it, but I definitely felt like I was faking it.
yeah.
And now this has become a common term that many people know. And that wasn't the case at the time. So it felt so reassuring to know, oh, I'm not the only one who feels this. And it's just a matter of recognizing that and not letting this hold you back.
Yeah.
And I can still suffer from imposter syndrome sometimes.
I was about to ask, does it
so
still
many
happen
years
to you?
later.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do you remedy it? What do you do to kind of prevent the feeling to grow?
Listen, I think, what is helpful already is just recognizing, this is not real. This is only my imposter syndrome speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you suffer from imposter syndrome, you actually feel like those people that have invited me don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're questioning them more than you're questioning yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is really at the source.
Yeah.
Because very often you don't suffer from imposter syndrome because you're somewhere uninvited.
Yeah.
It's very often because you've been given the job, you've been invited to a certain podium, stage, table, room. And so just realizing that, do I really think those people who've invited me to this made a mistake?
Yeah.
And just reminding yourself of that, I think is helpful already. And then I've also come to see my imposter syndrome as sort of like an annoying friend, but still a friend which is helpful, because this feeling still means that that you step it up.
Yeah.
that, that you keep standing on your toes, giving the best that you can. And the only thing that I try to be mindful of is that, and I've made that mistake many, many times, is that I'm not being silenced by this feeling of being an imposter. So that you still speak up. And
Yeah.
that to me is the dark side of imposter syndrome, when it keeps you small and it
Yeah.
keeps you silent, and it makes you
Yeah. When it stops you in your
not
tracks, you're a
your
little.
mind,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
your voice or your opinion or your expertise. So it shouldn't hold you back from contributing what you have to contribute.
Yeah. It's a fascinating conversation, and I think I think many people have suffer from some form of imposter syndrome. I've read somewhere that it unfortunately happens more to women who are overcome by this than to men.
That's
Maybe
true.
that's because men, have been empowered earlier on to to go for it and whatever, and that there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure that women take the lead and stuff like that. So maybe our culture doesn't reflect as much, and I'm very happy that of course that is evolving. But strong women and strong female leadership is very important also to see that it can be done, right? Like that helps to kind of
Right.
feel you more
And I think this
at
indeed
ease. Yeah.
happens more, not only to women, but to any people who are more in a minority group.
Yeah.
And so for me, so I'm a first generation student. My parents didn't go to college, did not have that opportunity. So for me to make it into academia was already sort of like far fetched. And you feel like, I didn't grow up in this. And then on top of that, to be a woman, indeed, when you're so often in rooms or around tables where you might be the only woman or one of the very few women, of course, you're more likely to feel like you're faking it or like
Yeah.
you're an imposter because you don't look like everybody else.
Yeah.
The same thing I noticed when I became the dean of Fleric. And then, I went to this conference for business school deans, and you're sitting in this big room full of, 50, 60 something gray haired men.
Yeah. Yeah. You're the odd
Because
one out. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the archetype.
Yeah.
And of course, you look around and like, well, I don't look like them at all. So how can I do this credibly and have credibility towards them, towards myself in this role? And how can I do this like me in my own way?
Let's talk about the other person, because I like the visualization of you stepping into this room, very old fashioned people in their 50s and 60s, gray haired men, and then in you come. Like, have you ever experienced that you were not taken seriously?
I've been so often mistaken for a student
Yeah.
instead of a professor.
Yeah.
I remember, this is just a small anecdote. I remember running a workshop for executives, and the first executive arrives and he shakes the hand of my assistant, who is male,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
says,
Goodness.
"Oh, good to meet you. I'm so looking forward to a fruitful discussion." And then he looks at me and says, "Oh, such beautiful eyes. And can we have some coffee around here?"
No. This is,
So I can laugh
you
at
couldn't
it.
make this up. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, so you do encounter those things, those things are, then you laugh at it, those are minor things, you experience also bigger things. But I think for the most part throughout my career, I ignored all of that. I was gender blind.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about it at all too much, even though, it's there to some extent, because indeed you run into these things,
Yeah.
into these occasions where you are indeed just, you don't feel like I'm being taken seriously from the get-go. That I always need to establish my credibility. That happens. But I think it was only when I became the dean of Fleric that I became more aware and less gender blind,
Yeah.
because more and more, and the higher you rise, the fewer women are around you,
Yeah.
amongst your peers. The top business schools, there's hardly any female deans. They are there, and more so. but still, you're in the minority. My first interviews, the very first question I got asked, I was interviewed, was, what difference does it make that you're a woman in this role? And I was like, oh, I've never even thought about this. I don't get up in the morning and think, what will I do as a female dean? You don't think about
No, of course
that
not.
at all.
Yeah.
But you're being asked those questions about what role does gender play into how you take up your role. And so I was forced to think about these things, to be more cognizant, to be more aware.
Yeah.
And so I started reading up on the research as well. I remember going to our faculty who research these topics and saying, help me out here, send me the research. I want to, of course, that's a typical academic's instinct to say, I want to go into the research and understand this phenomena, to also understand how I can deal with it and what's my position.
It's incredible. I just see this situation happening where you say this gentleman, he shakes the hand of your assistant and then looks at you, says something very disrespectful, like, oh, beautiful eyes, and can we have coffee? What was his response when you said, no, it's you've got it all wrong? How do people correct themselves, if they even do?
In those situations, actually, I try to always solve this, with some humor, and stay lighthearted about it, because obviously, and that may be also like a female tendency, like, you want to be gracious towards that person. Yeah. And typically they're then embarrassed and and ashamed, like, oh, okay. And
as they should be.
Situations as you saw, yes, absolutely, and because they confront us with our own biases, and I think people in those situations, then they don't do that of bad will, but you're suddenly being confronted with your own biases, and biases are human. I have biases, you have biases. And this is where, diving into the research has been helpful for me as well, to understand all of those phenomena, because we have all grown up with images of leadership that, if you ask anybody, also women, think of a leader, what image comes to mind? The image that will come to mind will, in all likelihood, be, more masculine, more older, probably white. And so we all have these biases ingrained in us. We all need to work hard.
We need to work on them.
To work on that, and to be aware.
But I think it's very graceful that you don't hold a grudge, or that you say, like, I need to fix the situation. You could also turn the tables and say, well, no, you need to get up with the times. It's like,
of course,
because you're doing the work to kind of
that's
so
true.
someone else
that's
can
true.
also
and that's very often, I think, what you do.
But on the other hand, you shouldn't let it hold you down, and you're obviously not, but it can be difficult maybe at some points, and sometimes demotivating if people don't take you seriously, because of it, right? But that's as you say, like, being a female dean. No, I am the dean. It's not, that's the bit that's interesting. The female part is what it is, but not relevant to the job. Yeah.
Indeed, I can't take any credit for my gender.
Let's go to your second challenge, because here you have this beautiful career path in the United States, 3 very notable, beautiful universities, and then there's the return to Belgium. What triggered your return to Belgium?
So for me, a challenge was indeed having reached all of that, realizing to a large extent the dreams that I had, even exceeding them, and then saying goodbye to that.
Yeah.
So leaving that behind, which felt a little bit like I worked hard to get to the Olympics, and now I can compete in the Olympics. You can call it the academic Olympics.
Yeah.
And now I'm just stepping away from that. Leaving that was a challenge. And the challenge in that was, in fact, in realizing I thought I wanted all of this, and I worked so hard to reach it. And now that I'm there, I'm actually not happy.
Wow.
And it takes you a while, at least it took me a while, to realize, one, I'm not happy. to dare to admit it to myself, I'm not happy, and then to take action. The challenge there was doing something which, in the eyes of myself and those around me, felt like failure, or like, taking a step back instead of, moving forward. But actually, when I look back now, this was the best thing ever for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took me again on a new path, a new road, towards an organization that I carried deep into my heart, that then in the end I was going to lead. I didn't know that was
At the time. Yeah.
at the time that was in store for me. That wasn't
Yeah.
also that wasn't the plan, not the intent, but it all led to it. And so it was what at the time felt like a failure and a step back was actually really a leap forward.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel that way.
I think it didn't feel that way because you didn't put your career first, you put your happiness first.
Right.
But that's also a crucial ingredient to who you are, right?
Exactly.
It's you as well, right? So
exactly. And it was really a lesson in you need to carve your own path, which, is one of the chapters in the book I wrote. You need to define success on your own terms. And you have to realize when sometimes you're actually doing things, you get caught up in fulfilling other people's expectations of you.
that's really great. And I mean, what I can so vividly imagine is that you're so driven by your career, by, getting the doctor title, the professor title, the next degree, and then, so
Top
those are,
publication.
those are your validation points. And all of a sudden you need to make a decision not to get such a validation point, but to dive into other aspects of yourself that you might not be so familiar with, but you need to feed as well, right? So
exactly, and having in that sense a richer, more multidimensional life, which then I've come to understand makes you actually a better professional as well.
Yeah,
it's people who are passionate and inspired outside of their work take that passion and inspiration also inside their work.
Yes, definitely.
And it actually feeds one another.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you just mentioned the book, and let me give you full justice to that book, because the book is called Making Your Way, The Wobbly Road to Success and Happiness, which you co-authored with another professor at Vlerik, Professor Kathleen de Stobbelaar. And before we hit the record button, you said we wrote it during COVID. Was that an introspective moment for you? Did that also trigger you to start the project, or was it already something that was
it was
before?
Already it was it was in the planning, and then COVID happened, and so I spent basically all my Sundays during that first lockdown writing on the book, which was a very nice change from, because the school was going, as any academic institution, through a major crisis. Our campuses were closed, so that there was a lot of work, there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of crisis management, tremendous learning opportunity, but that's another story. I would spend 6 days a week on all of that, and then on the seventh day I would be focused on writing, and which I so enjoyed. I like writing. It's a very solitary thing. You're in your cocoon, speaking to your readers. Your imaginary readers, and then once a book is there and the readers become real, and they tell you, I read your book and it was meaningful to me, and I did something with it. That's fantastic.
What was your main message with this book?
It's called Making Your Way, and I would put the emphasis on the making your way, doing it your way. Just as we just talked about, carve your own path, define success for yourself on your own terms. And then the other message is in the subtitle. The subtitle is The Wobbly Road to Success and Happiness in Life and Work. And so we really wanted to be real, and the wobbly road means it's a wobbly road for anyone, even those people that you look at and think, oh, wow, for them, it's just all smooth sailing, all the way to the top. In reality, they also had their challenges. Every glorious moment has, the flip side. It has a messy reality sometimes. And I think
Yeah.
you also use that word messy
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
behind it. And we wanted to be real about this,
Yeah.
that is just part of it,
Yeah.
those challenges. And also, so it's the wobbly road to success and happiness. And I think there as well, the recognition of success is probably only meaningful when you get personal satisfaction and fulfillment and purpose out of it, and which is such a big driver for happiness.
You've just summarized why we're doing this podcast. It's exactly why we're doing it. I personally saw so many people, justifiably so, projecting their success, right? Projecting the things that had gone right. And because we live in a day and age whereby it's all about the projection of success on social media and whatever, we forget to dive into the challenges that came on the path of the people who were successful. So it almost feels to the spectator or to the people looking at it saying, well, it's just one success after the other without any effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the 140 character tweet or in the quick video you watch on YouTube or whatever it is, it all needs to be summarized. So you can only talk about your success. You cannot really talk about the challenges, but you learn so much about the challenges, right? So you learn so much about everything that comes on your path. So that's why, the messy versus the masterful, which of course is the title of this podcast, Messy and Masterful. So that's wonderful, Marion. We've meeting of the minds, I would say. So I'm definitely going to read the book. We will be sure to include a show note with a link to the book for those people interested. So are there takeaways in how to deal with the wobbliness? Is it an advisory book, or is it more like a reflective book on your career path or on the career path of others?
Oh, so basically what we tackle is what we've seen as 15 myths that people still believe in, that we feel are, self-limiting.
Yeah.
And so we just want to dispel these myths. And that's really the goal of this book, so that, everybody takes away something out of it, so that the reader can live up to their full potential.
Yeah. Amazing. Very nice. Very nice. We also need to get back to your last challenge, because your last challenge is actually the big step, the big next step, and what you've been doing now since 2015, that's becoming dean. It's also how we started this interview. And I love what you're saying, like you came back from the United States, it felt like you were taking a step back, but actually it was a step up to, a beautiful next career step. Mm-hmm. Why did you put it down as a challenge? Is it because you didn't want it at the first place, or you because you said, like, I didn't want the corporate side of it, things you wanted to teach?
Yes, so indeed, that's how I started, saying, I don't want to go on in the managerial side of academia, but I got pulled into it. I think it's somewhere in my nature, to want to be part of decision making, to take responsibility, but then taking, the real leadership role, the role where, the buck really stops here. That's another, that's like another jump, another leap. It was really like stepping up to lead. I was 42 at the time, which is young to become a dean. It was there again. I'm not a long-term planner. It was not in my plan at all. I think Emma Watson in a speech once said, if not me, who? If not now, when? Yeah. And that is very much how it felt for me. Like, okay, here's, the train now stops at the station. You can get on.
Seize the moment. Take it.
Seize the moment. Yes, seize the moment, and get into the arena. Yeah. Even though you feel like you're not ready, you still have things to learn. You don't have all of it still, all of the competencies to do this. But I've come to realize that you never, unless you get onto the field, you don't get more ready by standing by the sidelines.
You obviously did not regret jumping into this opportunity? Were there any cold feet moment in the beginning, or what was there?
Oh,
Yeah,
many.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course, all the
yeah.
time.
All the time. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. There's many moments that you feel like, woo,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
how am I going to do this?
yeah.
But I had good advisors, good
Mm,
mentors. That's very helpful. I got
mm,
myself a coach, also super helpful. I recommend it to anybody. And so I've really, and this is what I learned from one of my mentors, is to learn to ask for help.
yeah,
And that was an important one.
yeah,
And how I tackled this particular challenge, it's somewhere in my nature and then learned behavior to try to fix things and do things by myself. And I really had to learn to not think about how can I do this, but more like who can I ask for help?
yeah,
Who could advise me in this? Who could
yeah,
be my ally in this? And that has helped me. Yeah,
yeah,
tremendously. It is still something that I need to remind myself of all the time. Like, don't try to do it all by yourself. Think about who could help you with this, because that's what leadership is about.
yeah,
It's not about doing it all yourself.
yeah.
It's
Do you
about
now feel?
mobilizing others.
Yeah. Do you now feel this is kind of being dean and doing it? It sounds like an extremely immersive job and loads of challenges. What, if anything, would you want to add still to this wobbly path of your career? Is there anything more? Because it sounds, of course, it's so beautiful already. But is there anything that you would say, hey, if this were to come along? Maybe cheeky question. But,
Yeah, so I've just been reappointed for a third term as dean,
yeah,
which has
yeah,
just started. I have
yeah,
a third 4-year term, so that's
yeah.
what I'm excited
Of course.
to
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
So we've got this, ambitions. We're investing in the school, so it's great. I want to see this to fruition. And the way that I do this, and this I think can be helpful for anybody. I've really thought in the past year about what are for me like the key words that describe what is important to me. And for me, those words are joy, growth, and purpose. And so for me, a successful day, a successful week, a successful month, a successful year is where I felt joyful. There's fun in what you do. In working together, you can be lighthearted. Don't take yourself seriously. I mean, there's joy in it. There's growth in it. For myself, I want to feel like I learn, I grow, I still do things that I haven't done before. And there's purpose in it. There's meaning in it. You feel like you do something which is worthwhile, has impact. And those are the three words for me. And as long as I feel those three, I'm in a good spot.
you know you're in a good place. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And if
That's
I
a
don't,
beautiful
I
answer.
need to course correct.
Nice. That's a great answer. Thank you so much, Marion. We're almost at the end of this interview, but before we do so, we have three questions that we ask to all our guests. I was wondering if you could help me finish the following sentence. As a child, I wanted to become a
Ballerina.
ballerina. What happened?
I was definitely not talented enough, but I loved it.
Okay, yeah. What did you like about it? Was there any specific thing? The movement?
The movement, the
Yeah,
grace, the
yeah,
beauty, definitely. And this is something that I think still do, and I took away from ballet. You're doing something which is super hard. Like your toes can be literally bleeding in your shoes, and you make it look effortless, and you
yeah,
smile while doing
yeah,
it.
yeah. That's maybe something because what you're doing is cannot be easy either, and you do it like it looks pretty effortless, like being
Like
the
a
way you
ballerina.
do it, right? Yeah, like a ballerina. So you took something with you,
Yes,
some
yes,
ballerina
definitely.
ingredients with
Yeah,
you
yeah.
in your career. Then the next question is around reading. So we always ask our guests, like, is there any particular book or article or platform or whatever it is that has inspired you on your path and that you would recommend to the people listening in?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good question. Obviously, I would recommend my own book.
Well, you can't.
But I am a ferociously
Yeah.
reader.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's this saying like every leader is a reader. I read a lot since I was a child, basically. I read the entire library in my hometown, and then I went to the next bigger city to
plunder
read,
the library. Yeah.
to read even more. I still read a lot. I actually, every summer, I send my summer reading recommendations out to our alumni and I share it on social media. Obviously, those are business books, so I can share that with you guys as well.
Maybe there's one book
One that I would recommend, which I enjoyed, and so which stands out now, is the book by Indra Nooyi. It's called My Life in Full.
Yeah.
Where she shares her story and her career lessons, and I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah,
I would definitely recommend it.
Let's go with that. My Life in Full by Indra Nooyi, and we'll be sure to include this in our show notes. And then of course your reading list. So if people want to sign up to that, or is it for alumni, or is it like a publicly available thing?
I've shared it on social media, so I can share it with you. It's online.
Follow Marion on all the socials to find out about her reading recommendations. And then the very last question. Now let's turn the tables. This is the Dr. Marion Debruyne podcast, not anymore Messy and Masterful. It's your podcast. Who would be high on your list as one of your first guests? Who would be your dream guest?
Oh, again, a very good question that I wish I thought about before. So when I dove into like, what does it mean to be a woman in leadership? That was about the time when Sheryl Sandberg wrote Lean In.
Lean In, yeah.
Which I thought was also a very worthwhile read. So I'd be very interested to speak to her now and talk to her about what have you learned since, how have your views evolved, and how do you look at your future? Yeah, that I think would be fascinating.
Sheryl Sandberg. So if anyone, Sheryl, if you're listening, or anyone around Sheryl Sandberg, if you are listening, we have Dr. Marion Debruyne who would love to interview you on Messy and Masterful or her own podcast. Those are beautiful recommendations. It's also a great career path, and undoubtedly the world will hear a lot more from you and of the Vlerick Business School. Are there any kind of, now with the start of the new academic year, any new exciting things happening in the near future? Or, other than just starting, I appreciate that is
just starting. So one of the exciting things is we just launched a new MBA, an executive MBA with a focus on sustainability.
Okay.
And so that's a super exciting development. Very cool program.
Nice. It's in Brussels, or is it like?
It's blended, so it's partly online, partly in Brussels, and partly in different locations in Europe, where we dive into the exciting things that are happening there. In terms of sustainability. So the group goes to Paris, for example, to learn about sustainable finance. They go to Dublin to learn about how digital can contribute to a more sustainable world. So,
Wow, all over the place, and looking at sustainability from so many different angles. That sounds like...
We'll have to come back to Vlerick, Aldo.
Yeah. I'd love to one day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and this wonderful interview. Dr. Marion Debruyne.
If you liked this episode, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Philip Anderson for our beautiful theme music. This episode was edited by Natalie Piles with production assistance from Genta Metalia.